The young people in the film you're about to watch were much the same as you and me. They listened to music, went to the movies, and played sports. They sneaked around behind their parents' backs and dreamed about learning to drive and go to college. But when the Nazis took power in Europe, their lives changed. When things got rough, each of them kept a diary. Today, 60 years later, through their words, we can see what they saw and feel what they felt. Their diaries tell a powerful, difficult story. So watch only if you really want to know what happened.
April 20th. Today's that asshole Hitler's birthday.
Saturday, March 7th. When I look at the barbed wire that separates us from the rest of the world, my soul longs for freedom.
June 11th. I go on dreaming about survival and about getting fame in order to tell the world.
During the Holocaust, teenagers all over Europe recorded their experiences in diaries and journals. The most well-known was Anne Frank, who wrote her diary while hiding from the Nazis. But she wasn't the only one. After the war, other diaries written by young people were found in abandoned hiding places, in the rubble of the concentration camps, and in the safekeeping of trusted friends. The diaries bear witness to an uncommon courage and determination. These young writers refused to quietly disappear. Despite overwhelming obstacles, they made a mark on the world and left a record of their lives during the darkest of times. In 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party took power in Germany. They began passing laws limiting the freedom of Jewish people, those they considered inferior, as well as anyone who dared to oppose their views. Before the Nazi rise to power, Klaus Langer lived a comfortable life with his family and friends in Essen, Germany. But by the time he began writing his diary, he, like other German Jews, had already suffered repression and humiliation at the hands of the Nazis.
September 8th, 1938. Today, Bobby and I went with the girls to the pool. However, there was a sign saying that Jews were not desired. That meant that we could no longer go swimming. November 11th. The past 3 days brought significant changes in our lives. On November 7th, a German official was assassinated in Paris. On November 10th came the consequences. At 3 o'clock, the synagogue and Jewish Youth Center were put on fire. Then they began to destroy Jewish businesses. During the morning, private homes were also being demolished. At 6:30, the Gestapo came to our house and arrested my father and my mother. My mother returned after about 1.5 hours. Dad remained and was put in prison. In the middle of the night, the stormtroopers smashed windows, and they demanded to be let into the house. Allegedly, they were looking for weapons. After they found no weapons, they left. After that, no one was able to go back to sleep. I shall never forget that night.
For another year, Klaus and his family continued to live under Nazi rule, trying desperately to leave the country. Klaus eventually escaped from Germany, but like many other young people fleeing the Nazis, he was separated from his parents and had to make the journey alone.
September 8th, 1939. At 4 o'clock, I left Essen. The departure from my parents was very short and difficult. I have no idea when I will see them again, especially because the war is on now. When I sit here all alone, I often think of my parents and grandmother, and then only sad thoughts come to mind.
August 27th, 1942. This diary is written from my parents, in the hopes that it will reach them both. August 29th. The mailman was here. I run to ask if there is something for me. Praise the Lord, a postcard from you telling me that you are together at Vernet. I hope that you will be released.
Peter Feigl, an Austrian Jewish teenager, was also separated from his parents during the Holocaust. Hoping to protect Peter from the Nazis' anti-Jewish policies, his parents had him baptized as a Catholic when he was 8 years old. But in the eyes of the Nazis, Peter was still Jewish. The family fled to France when Peter was 11. He was sent into hiding at a Catholic summer camp just before his parents were arrested and taken to a French internment camp. He received a few postcards from his parents before their letters came to a sudden halt.
August 28th. I went to communion and I prayed for you, my loved ones. Saturday, September 12th. I have written you a card every other day, just as you asked. Tonight I cried. Who knows where you were taken to? October 19th. No letter. Nothing from you. Wednesday, November 25th. It will soon be Christmas. Who knows whether we will ever meet again?
Peter managed to evade deportation for almost 2 years. He was aided by Christian organizations that defied Nazi law in order to protect Jewish children. In May 1944, he and a group of young people attempted to escape on foot from France into Switzerland.
Monday, May 22nd, 1944. At 12 p.m., I jump off the running train. The guides tell us to hide in a grass field. Cops go by. At 1 p.m., we are marching along a road. There's a young kid who's screaming, and the guides are furious. We go through the woods. We see the border. No Krauts, no French. We lie flat on the ground. It rained, and we're soaking wet. The signal for us. On the run, we get near to the barbed wires. We throw our backpacks over the fence, and we cross. That night, I sleep soundly in a free country.
June 3rd, 1940. The war now becomes personal and more real from day to day. I am not afraid of the bombings. I cannot imagine that something would fall on my head. Paris is probably well defended.
Elizabeth Kaufman was a talented young art student who fled her native Austria with her family, seeking refuge from Nazi persecution. They settled in Paris, where they found temporary safety as refugees. But when Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, starting World War II, the Kaufmans again found themselves in danger. Amid the upheaval of war, the French began imprisoning enemy aliens in internment camps. As Austrians, Elizabeth's father and brother were among those sent away.
March 12th, 1940. Permission to visit Peter at the internment camp has been rejected. It is unbelievable. It is horrible to be confined for 7 months in a limited space behind barbed wire without having committed any crime.
10 months later, the German army prepared its attack on France. Many tried desperately to flee, including Elizabeth and her mother.
June 10th. The newspapers have stopped. All the world is leaving Paris. The streets are filled with refugees. June 11th. Tomorrow, Mother and I will leave Paris. I asked myself for how long. Forever, or will it be for only a short time? June 13th. Yesterday, after we had become quite tired from walking, I found a car whose driver was willing to take my mother. I showed Mother the car, pushed her to make her go faster, and then climbed on my bike and rode away. At the last minute, I remembered that I had no idea where the car was going, and when I yelled and asked, the driver had only time to yell back, Saint-Remy. As I approached Saint-Remy, I had no idea how in this chaos of cars and people I could find my mother again. After 1 hour, Mother still had not come, and I started to worry. Then it began to rain. A third hour passed. I became increasingly afraid and anxious. It was already 7, then 8, then 9 o'clock. It got later and later and wetter. Suddenly, I saw Mother getting out of a car. I ran to her. June 14th, Chartres. The town square. I went around and asked for a seat for Mother. It was useless. Mother said I should ride ahead and she would continue to look for a ride. A gray, wet morning. A city is leaving, a city in flight. The Germans are coming.
The Germans quickly overran France, and by June 14th, the defeat of France was official. Luckily, Elizabeth and her family were reunited and were able to emigrate to the United States in early 1942. By that time, the Germans, in collaboration with French officials, had already begun sending Jews to their deaths at the Auschwitz-Birkenau killing center. Elizabeth's brother Peter returned to France as a soldier in the American Army. He lost his life in battle at the age of 24, fighting the Germans.
March 24th, 1941. German soldiers had been passing through. My head was in a whirl with so many vehicles and cavalry. It was fun watching the soldiers pass through. We hardly ever see soldiers in our parts.
In September 1939, the German army invaded and occupied Poland. With the outbreak of war, it became virtually impossible to escape. A small number of people found ways to hide, but most were forced to face Nazi persecution head-on. David Rabinowitz lived with his family in a small farming village in rural Poland. They experienced the brutality of the German police on a daily basis. He and all his friends and neighbors lived in a constant state of fear.
June 17. A man said we must hide all our valuables because the German police would be back. There was a terrible panic in the village, as if bandits were coming. And then they came. When they were near to our house, I thought my heart would jump out. November 1st. Today, notices were put up in Kielce that anyone who goes in and out of the Jewish quarter will receive the death penalty. December 12th. Early this morning, the German police came. As they were driving along the highway, they met a Jew who was going out of town, and they immediately shot him for no reason. Then they drove on and shot a Jewish woman, again for no reason. So 2 victims have perished for absolutely no reason at all. All the way home, I was very frightened. December 26th. An order has come that Jews were to hand over all furs, and whoever they found with any furs would receive the death penalty. December 28th. 5 Jews killed by the German police because someone had reported them for hiding furs. The German police ordered them to be buried in a hole in their own yard. They were a father, 3 sons, and a daughter. Such an unhappy fate. January 19th. The village constable ordered us to go and shovel snow right away. He took us right up the hill where the worst frost and driving snow was, and we had to work until sunset. We were weeping with cold. Not until evening did he release us, saying we had to report for work the next morning. February 12th. The village constable came up and began putting up a caricature of the Jews. The heading of the notice reads, "The Jew is a cheat, your only enemy." Some people came along and their laughter gave me a headache. March 19th. Today there have been rumors circulating that on Sunday, 6 squads of Polish police are coming, plus the German police. Everyone goes around frightened, wondering where he can hide. We waited in great fear for some terrible moment. What, we didn't know. I kept on going out of the house. It was so quiet. It was as if everyone had died. Only the German police kept walking up and down. We live at a time when you can't speak out. All you can do is keep quiet and swallow everything.
It is Sunday, the 21st of June, 1941. A beautiful summer day. Our cheerful conversation was interrupted by the howling of a siren. Bombs are bursting all over the city. It is war. They have forced a war upon us. And so we shall retaliate and strike until we smash the aggressor.
Yitzhak Rudashevsky, a serious, thoughtful student, lived at home in Vilna, Lithuania, with his parents and grandmother. Then, in the summer of 1941, the German army invaded his country and marched through the streets of Vilna.
It's hard to comprehend that everything has actually come to a dead stop. The school is sealed up. The German army is marching, a black mirage of tanks, motorcycles, machines. Jews are humiliated and exploited. I stand at the window and feel a sense of rage. We are exposed to mockery, humiliation. The mood becomes worse from day to day. The 8th of July. The decree was issued that the Vilna population must put on badges front and back, a yellow circle, and inside it the letter J. For a long time I could not put on the badge. I was ashamed to appear in them on the street, not because it would be noticed I am a Jew, but because I was ashamed of what they were doing to us. I was ashamed of our helplessness.
In Vilna, as throughout Europe, the Nazis rounded up the Jews and forced them into makeshift ghettos for months and years on end. They lived cut off from the outside world, in poverty and filth, enduring terrible hunger and disease.
It is the end of the summer of 1941. We do not know what is in store for us. The furniture of the Jews is being confiscated. People are talking about a ghetto. The Jews in our courtyard are in despair. They are transferring things to their Christian neighbors. It is the 6th of September. The streets are turbulent. A ghetto is being created for the Vilna Jews. People are packing in the house. I see how we are being uprooted overnight from our home. I see things scattered that were dear to me. The street streamed with Jews carrying bundles, a picture of the Middle Ages. I walk burdened and irritated. The Lithuanians drive us on, do not let us rest. I think of nothing. Not what I'm losing, not what I've just lost, not what is in store for me. Here is the ghetto gate. I feel that I've been robbed. My freedom is being robbed from me. My home. We settle down in our place. Besides the 4 of us, there are 11 persons in the room. I feel as if I were in a box. Wherever you go, you encounter a gate that hems you in. In the morning, the terrible news spreads. Several thousand people were uprooted from the ghetto at night. These people never came back. Like animals sensing the storm, everyone is looking for a place to hide, to save his life. Something terrible is hovering in the air.
The German and Lithuanian authorities swept through the Vilna ghetto, seizing people and taking them away to the Pinar forest, where they were shot to death. In fear for their lives, families tried to hide wherever they could.
The whole hideout is filled with restless murmuring, an imprisoned mass of people. It is stifling. The odor of cellar and people crowded together. The hideout is being hammered up. My parents are somewhere upstairs. I'm downstairs with my uncle. We are like animals surrounded by the hunter beneath us, above us, from the sides. Broken locks snap, doors creak. I feel the enemy under the boards on which I am standing. They pound, tear, break. Suddenly, somewhere upstairs, a child burst into tears. A desperate groan breaks forth from everyone's lips. We are lost. A desperate attempt to shove sugar into the child's mouth is of no avail. The child is shouting more loudly. The Lithuanians are pounding more strongly against the walls. However, slowly everything calmed down by itself. My heart beats with such joy. I have remained alive. We creep out of the hideout after a 6-hour imprisonment. I go out into the street. On the pavement lie bundles. A bloody reminder of the people who've just been dragged away to their deaths. Some of those taken were led away to Pinar. Pinar is a slaughterhouse for thousands of Jews. Pinar is the same as a nightmare. Pinar is a passive word. The word contains the tragedy of our helplessness. No, we shall not go to Pinar.
Yitzhak's cousin Sora escaped the firing squad and fled into the forest. She joined a group of fighters called partisans, who hid in the woods and attacked the Nazis at every opportunity. After the war, Sora returned to Vilna and found Yitzhak's diary in the family's hiding place. It was published in English in 1973.
It dawned on me that today is my birthday. Today I do not feel the slightest despair, and I live confident in the future. I am not conflicted about it and see before me sun and sun and sun.
November 10th, 1942. Father has obtained a new position in the ghetto. He's become the conductor of the Jewish policemen's chorus now being formed. Sounds like a bad dream. The Jews in the ghetto, people condemned to death, future daisy pushers, these are the ones who are to create a chorus in the ghetto. Why? To amuse the embittered public? For whom? For the Germans?
During the summer of 1941, Ilya Gerber and his family were forced into the Kovno ghetto in Lithuania, together with 30,000 other Jews. Ilya's father was a respected music teacher and conductor. He was friendly with powerful people inside the ghetto who could make life a little easier for the family. Still, Ilya's account of his years inside the sealed ghetto walls is grim.
It became known that bringing food into the ghetto is permitted only until the 26th of this month. After the 26th, you will not be able to carry into the ghetto even 1 gram of food. What has been taking place in the ghetto in the past few days is hard to describe. People struggled and fought at the ghetto gate. Everyone wanted to slip a food parcel in order not to starve, to be able to provide for later, for hard times. And yesterday was the same, only worse. The shoving was horrendous. The last day of being able to bring anything home for the family turned everyone into an animal. November 15th. An assassination was attempted against a ghetto commandant. A certain watchmaker named Mek tried to crawl through the fence with a package. The commandant noticed Mek and wanted to detain him. Mek shot at him but missed. We all wondered, a Jew should have a weapon on him? November 18th. Mek will be hanged today. There arrived many big shots in taxis, on horseback, on motorcycles, and on foot. They came with one object: to see the Jew hanging. December 20th, 1942. Despite the fact that spirits in the ghetto are not very high, the musical circles are working at 120%. They arrange concerts. Even the German commandant came together with the Lithuanian one. They liked the concert a lot and applauded a great deal.
Dear Dad, Mom, and Ava, I'm still all right, although not quite as well as before. But you needn't worry about me. The magazine I'm editing has been published. I write some serious stories for it. My lessons are going well. 3 weeks ago, we had a case of polio in our room. Thank God there were no new cases. Love from your Peter. P.S. Send me a book on sociology.
In 1942, Peter Ginz was separated from his family and deported from his home in Prague to the Terezín ghetto. There he lived in a large barracks with a group of boys his own age, where, as in other ghettos, they studied in secret. Peter defied the harshness of his surroundings with his creative and intellectual pursuits. He particularly enjoyed writing and editing an underground magazine called Vedem.
Planned for November 1943. Get to know perfectly a brief history of humankind. Report for November. Bookbinding. Lino cut. A medieval mythological ship. Have read Plato's Euthyphro, Credo, Apology of Socrates, part of Phaedo. I couldn't do more because of unsettled conditions at the end of the month. German visits and call-ups to do labor.
The call-ups for labor were in fact deportations to the death camp at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Though everyone feared the worst, few knew the horrifying details of life in the camps.
Plans for December. Finish reading Plato, devote more time to drawing, continue bookbinding. Report for December. The beginning of the month, transports to Birkenau. Great chaos. Plans for January 1944. Do more writing and drawing, not just capturing other people's thoughts. February 8th. I'm wondering what my family is doing in Prague. I can't even remember Ava's face properly anymore.
Peter's mother was born Catholic, but he and his sister Ava grew up in a traditional Jewish home. According to the Nazis, Peter and Ava were considered Mischlinge, children of a mixed marriage. In May 1944, 2 years after Peter's deportation, Ava was also sent to the Terezín ghetto.
Report, May 1944. Ava arrived.
June 24th. On Wednesday, it will have been 6 weeks since I first arrived here. We came by train. They took us to the Hamburg barracks where we were held locked up for 3 days. They took our bags from us and didn't give us any food. We were able to look out the window, and when Peter came there to see me and talk to me, he brought me something to eat.
Plans for June. Do lots of drawings and write articles on the subjective truth of culture.
June 26th. I feel so homesick. July 1st. When I arrived here, I thought I would definitely be back home within 2 months, but now I'm starting to lose hope. All the grown-ups who came here with me are leaving today for Birkenau. They were mostly all skin and bones. We still have a history test on Monday, and I haven't yet done anything for it.
August. I have a lot of catching up to do in Latin and math.
August 16th. Yesterday I came back from the hospital. I had scarlet fever and diphtheria. They carried me away on a stretcher. Peter came to the window to see me twice, sometimes even 3 times every day. September 16th. Peter was ill, and there's a sort of epidemic now in Terezin. I was extremely concerned about him coming down with something. It's just the 2 of us here, Peter and me, and if something were to happen to him, how would I explain it to my parents? September 22nd, a transport's leaving. Men aged from 16 to 50 going to work in Germany. I'm concerned about Peter having to go as well. I don't know if half Jews are protected from this.
Plans, September 1944. Do lino cuts, drawings, stenography, and English. Really shine at something, but if I do, make sure that it's worth it.
Peter's plans came to a sudden end in September 1944, when he and his cousin Pavel were put on a train for Auschwitz-Birkenau.
September 27th. So Peter and Pavel are on the transport. When I found out, I cried my eyes out. I try to keep calm in front of Peter. I don't want to make him feel worse. September 28th. The train's already here, and both boys have already gotten on it. It is a horrible sight that will stay with me forever. A crowd of women, children, and old men were pressed around the barracks to get a last look at their son, husband, father, or brother. The sound of crying came from all around. I pressed through the crowd and crawled under the ropes that separated the crowd from the barracks and past Peter Bread through the window. I had enough time to hold his hand through the bars before a guard drove me away. Now the boys are gone. And the only thing left from them here is their empty beds.
Wenn es dem internationalen Finanzjudentum in und außerhalb Europas gelingen sollte, die Völker noch einmal in einen Weltkrieg zu stürzen, dann wird das Ergebnis nicht die Bolschewisierung der Erde und damit der Sieg des Judentums sein, sondern die Vernichtung der jüdischen Rasse in Europa.
Over time, the Jews in the ghettos became aware of the murders taking place around them. Although they did not know of Hitler's organized plan, the so-called final solution, they heard rumors of deadly conditions in the concentration camps and mass killings in the East.
Monday, March 16th. Hundreds of Jews may die for one word the Germans don't like. Our life is so tragic, so degraded. They treat us worse than pigs. I have to restrain myself in order not to shout some insults. You have to be quiet, although your heart is breaking.
The ghetto in Lodz, Poland was sealed in May 1940, completely segregating the Jews from the surrounding non-Jewish population. For this reason, it was almost impossible to smuggle food, supplies, and medicine into the ghetto. Living only on meager food rations supplied by the Germans, Jews in the Lodz ghetto suffered terribly from hunger, starvation, and death due to malnutrition. a teenage girl recorded her daily anguish in her diary. She did not sign her name, so her identity remains unknown to this day.
People are in a state of panic, and this hunger, a struggle against death from starvation. Life is terrible. Living conditions are abominable, and there's no food. Friday, February 24th, 1942. Today, I got 1 kilogram of parsley. My brother, father, and I ate it raw. Sunday, March 8th. My father gets some soup because he works for the ghetto. I didn't eat anything before 3 o'clock. When my father came from work, he brought me some soup. I was in 7th heaven. My brother was so upset he cried like a baby. Monday, March 9th. The starvation is impossible. It gives me a headache I can hardly see. The emptiness haunts the apartment. There isn't even a single crumb there. Tuesday, March 10th. In the morning, I want my father to leave as soon as possible. Then I jump from the bed and consume all the bread my mom has left for me the entire day. My God, what has happened to me? I don't know how to restrain myself. Then I starve all day. Wednesday, March 11th. Today I had a fight with my father. It happened because yesterday I weighed 20 decagrams of noodles and then sneaked a spoonful. When my father came back, he immediately noticed that some noodles were missing. My father started yelling at me, and he was right. I became very upset and cursed my father. What have I done? I regret it so much, but it can't be undone. My father is not going to forgive me. We would be a happy family if I didn't fight with everybody. All of the fights are started by me. I would like to be different, but I don't have a strong enough will. There's nobody I could talk to. God, show me what is right. Friday, March 13th. My father told me to come to his workshop and get some soup. After all, a father is always a father.
Tuesday, July 15th, 1942. I know that all my writing is meaningless. Nobody will read my journal, and as for me, should I escape alive from here, I will throw into the fire everything that will remind me of the damn time spent here. And still, I write.
In Romania during World War II, the country's fascist government undertook a program of persecution and genocide of its own Jewish population. As a result, hundreds of thousands of Romanian Jews were killed. Miriam Korber, an intelligent girl who wanted to study medicine, was exiled with her family to the remote region of Transnistria in Ukraine.
On Sunday at 6 in the morning, we found out that we were leaving, but we could not even begin to imagine what we would live through. Who could have such a dark imagination? The long road was muddy, strewn with wagons, filled with bags, bundles, children, and old people. We are loaded into cars that are actually used to transport horses. So we get in, 38 people in a car. We were afraid that they would seal the cars. Along the road, we saw the homes of the Jews who had been killed. We saw on each wall, written with charcoal, the names of those who had been murdered.
Once in Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of Jews were left to die in ghettos, exposed to hunger, cold, illness, filth, humiliation, and despair.
Friday, December 26th. Last night, the north wind started to blow. A true Ukrainian wind, the wind of the steppe. It blows into our room. Thursday, January 1st, 1942. If it goes on like this, I don't know how we will survive winter, because in the past few days, I could not warm up my feet anymore. And incessantly the same concern, what will we eat today? What will we eat tomorrow? Wednesday, January 21st. Today I realized that it would have been better if they had killed us all in our home rather than sending us away to this wasteland to die of cold and hunger, since this is the goal of the people who sent us here. It would have been more humane. But it looks like we are doomed to writhe in pain, and not just for a minute as by firing squad, but for months and years. Saturday, July 4th. There are terrible stories about the brutal ways in which thousands of Jews were killed in the villages and towns. Mothers and fathers killed in front of their own children, or the other way around. Children thrown alive in the ditches where their parents lie dead, stoned to death. And people keep silent. They keep silent in front of only one man, an evil genius who terrorizes an entire world. Some days, I just want to die and wish for death to come with the same passion that I once had to study medicine. There are days in which I wish to live and see the end of this war, to live beautiful days as in the past. But death is kinder, all still and peaceful, without tears.
January 3rd, 1942. At the fresh grave of my peers, I dream about such trivial things. Plays and movies are a dream. Today is very sad. Tomorrow is unknown.
In 1941, the German army occupied Elsa Binder's hometown of Stanislavov, Poland. Repressions, terror, and executions followed swiftly. On October 12, 1941, a massacre of more than 10,000 Jews took place. Many of Elsa's friends were killed in this massacre. She wrote about them in her diary. Her words provide a eulogy for millions of young people killed during the Holocaust.
January 12th, 1942. Today our town is missing 12,000 Jews, but life has to go on. Those who were condemned to death were accompanied by crying, wailing, and loud cries of Shema Yisrael. Samik, my friend, I don't even know how you died. Were you hit with a sadist brick as you stood out above the crowd? Did the crowd suffocate you? Or maybe you were swallowed by a huge mass grave when your chest was shot through so precisely. Or maybe, my God, maybe you were slightly wounded and were taking your last breaths for hours over and under corpses. Or maybe you followed your parents voluntarily, like our friend Zaporka. Zippy, this is really hurting so much. With your open arms, lightly like a bird, you flew into the grave after your family. After the shot, you fluttered your arms gently, and your face fell in the chest of your father, mother, or sister. You loved life with so much passion. I can hardly believe that your clear and hard-working heart is not beating, and never will. It's strange, but there's no hate in my heart, just immense pain, astonishment, and a pervasive question. Why?
On April 30th, 1945, facing total defeat, Hitler took his own life. The war in Europe ended 1 week later. The surviving Jews and other victims of the Nazis were liberated by Allied American, British, and Russian troops. Today, there exist more than 60 diaries written by young people during the Holocaust. Many of these writers were killed by their tormentors, but their lives were not erased. In the face of death, they wrote their dreams for the future, for the world, and for you.
Doubts are growing in my soul. Quiet. Time go ahead. Time which carries liberation in its unknown tomorrow. Maybe not for me, but for people like me. The result is certain, down with any doubts. Everything comes to an end. Spring will come.
The Holocaust didn't happen very long ago. Some of those who survived the war are still alive today. They share their personal stories of the Holocaust so that we'll never let genocide happen again. But it has happened in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, and now in the Sudan. What can we do about it? The young writers you watch tonight use the means of their time, pen and paper, so that they and their families would not disappear without a trace. You can make their words mean something by hearing their stories and by using the means of your time to make a difference. You can ask questions, find out what's happening, and decide what kind of mark you want to make on the world around you.